Today I'm just covering uh, information that's in an operator's manual. It's something you should get whenever you purchase a piece of equipment, whether that's chainsaw, trimmer, uh, blowers, zero turns, uh, any of that kind of stuff. They all have an operator's manual, and if you didn't get one at a dealership, it should be available online. A lot of people just never open these things or throw them away, but there's a good bit of decent information in them. They're worth keeping around. We're just going to cover that real briefly. You get a table of contents just like looking through any other book, and I'm sure everyone expects it just to be nothing but safety information, which is good. You should read your safety information. Just make sure that whoever is using the piece of equipment is somewhat competent um, and versed in proper use of it. But we're going to jump around in here a little bit. This is for a this particular manual is for a CS501P. It's an Echo chainsaw, and a few of the things in here that are good. They cover what causes chain kickback. Some people know what it is. Some people have no idea about it. It's danger if you're using a chainsaw. Just it's covered in here. Chain brake. How to test if your chain brake is properly functioning. All the different warnings about how you can hurt yourself. This one's a good one. They cover physical condition in here. They just cover your judgment. Physical dexterity may not be good if you're tired or sick. Taking medication if you used alcohol or drugs. Operate a unit only if you're physically and mentally well. I worked at a place where I ran assault a lot, and it was during the heat of a Texas summer. I'd only run it about 6 hours a day max, because after that I started getting real wore down, tired, and when you're tired, that's when you make mistakes with your potentially dangerous equipment. Different hearing protection, hand protection, what clothing you should wear. A lot of this is common sense, but that's not so common nowadays, so it's a good thing they put it in these books. This one covers all your different symbols. You have folks that don't know what the choke symbols mean. Every now and then you get someone that's they're pulling and pulling and pulling while it's on closed choke position, and they're flooding out their equipment, and they can't figure out why. It's because they got the two mixed up, or they just might not have known about them. This page just kind of covers the anatomy of a chainsaw. Different kickback, more stuff regarding kickback. You can get these guards that go over the tips. They don't 100% prevent it in every situation and scenario, but they'll greatly reduce your chances of kickback. How tight you should have your guide bar nuts. If you over tighten them, you're either going to strip out the nut or the stud, and if you strip out the stud, that can be a potentially expensive repair, depending on how bad it's stripped out or what model of saw. They cover fuel. I bet they're going to cover oil in here somewhere too. Mixing instructions. Chain lubricant. Doesn't look like they're... Here we go. Here's two-stroke oil. all your Echo equipment, you're supposed to have something that meets ISO LEGD or JSO FD standards. That's just a two-stroke oil certification. Here's a canned fuel, and it says for any 2-cycle engine requiring 40 to 51 mix, or all 4-cycle engines. It has no rating, no oil rating. So if you use something that has no oil rating on it, it's just generally suggested that you don't use it, or if you do, add properly spec'd oil. This Echo Red Armor, what you're looking for is this right here. That's your oil rating. It just means it meets JSO FD standards, and it has the certification number. If it doesn't have the certification number on it, well, that it may be certified, it may not be. Certain brands are having a little bit of issue with consistency in their premixed fuels. This is a 2-stroke racing oil. I'm sure it's a great lubricant, but it only meets TC, not FD. Hang on, reading the wrong one. Meets JSO FC, not JSO FD. So your JSO FD oil will go, it's backwards compatible in the FB and FC rated machines, but not, it's not considered compatible with today's machines that want an FD certified oil. Back to the book, mixing instructions. Here's one about storing fuel. Do not mix more fuel than you expect to use in 30 days, 90 days when fuel stabilizer is added. Today's pump gas is pretty bad. That's a pretty good rule of thumb. I tell customers all the time, if you let fuel sit in a piece of equipment for more than 30 days, you're rolling the dice. It's just fuel quality, fuel from the pump doesn't have any additives in it to stabilize it longer, and it goes bad fast, or goes stale. If it's improperly stored, it can suck water out of the air with the ethanol in it. If you want to see that happen, you put a little bit in a stainless dish on a humid day, set it outside on the ground, it'll start going cloudy within a few minutes. Once that fuel clouds up, it's not really good anymore. It's pretty much stale. Back to the book. Covers how to start your unit, proper directions, things to check for, loose chain, make sure your saw is oiling, more instructions how to cut safely. This one has a little bit on felling a tree. That's handy information. Limbing, bucking, how to fell big trees. If your bar won't go through the tree in one swipe, doesn't mean that you can't get the tree down. You just have to take slices of it, sort of like a pie. This one covers what chains you use, on what bar on the saw. Here's a really good section that a lot of people don't know about. This is your maintenance intervals and how often it's recommended to check stuff over, and how difficult it is to perform that maintenance. Anything that's a 1 is not difficult at all. Anything at a 2 is not, it's not difficult for your average person, but you may need a few tools. And then if it says 3, that's someone that's got some mechanical experience should be looking at it. carburetor adjustment. A lot of folks don't know how to adjust a carburetor. Let's see, this one gives you a few steps. It's not that difficult. Just count how far you rotated that screw. If you're sitting down like this is a tuning screwdriver, so it's got a little arrow on it, so you can count, say, hey, I made a half turn out on that adjustment. If it runs worse, well, you can go a half turn in and it's back to where it was. Checking air filter, spark plug, fuel filter, that's something a lot of people don't mess with. They're not that difficult to change out. And really, if you have something that's running bad, you should probably do all your maintenance before bringing it into a shop. Most of this is fairly simple to do, and it could potentially save you a lot of money or avoid an unnecessary repair. This is a section on sharpening chains. Even talks about, what the pieces of the chains are. You have tie straps, drive links. If it's got a little bumper on the top of it, that's a guard link. That's a kickback reducing feature. Tie straps and your cutters. Your cutters all have a depth gauge on them. Some people call it a raker. This is real important to look at when you're sharpening chains. Let's see. They mention it over here. There's a tool for it. If these if these depth gauges are too high, your tooth can be sharp. I mean, it can be real sharp, but if that depth gauge is too high, you're not going to cut anything, and that's something that can damage saws or cook a motor, and it reduces the efficiency in which you can do your job. If you're a professional, you want to avoid that. Any chance you get. And then a troubleshooting page. This is really handy. If you don't have to be a mechanic to be able to figure some of this stuff out. The troubleshooting page is really good. Is your engine hard to start or doesn't start at all? Gives you a list of things to check. Is there fuel to the carburetor? Is there fuel in the cylinder? Is there spark at the end of the spark plug? Is there spark at is there spark at the plug wire, and is there spark at the spark plug? Then it's just a checklist. It's pretty much a flow chart. You just follow it to the end. Hey, do I have fuel at my carburetor? Yes. Well, you ignore that line. Do I have fuel at the cylinder? Yes. Then I ignore that line. Now, do I have spark at the plug wire? No. No spark. Here's your next things to check. Well, could just be that your stop switch is off. Turn the switch on. Voila, the engine starts. I'm a small engine mechanic, and I do that sometimes. Just didn't realize that the switch was off. You get to pulling on a machine, it doesn't want to start, and then you look down and you're like, oh man, I'm an idiot. Turn the switch on and it fires right up. So this is a really good page in your owner's manual, operator's manual, whatever you want to call it. Here's one that talks about storage. They recommend that you drain your fuel completely and press the bubble to remove any fuel from the carburetor. If you just dump the fuel out of the tank and you don't press your purge bulb, well, the carburetor sits there full of fuel, and if it's today's fuel or has ethanol, that can cause some issues. If it gets to sit for a few weeks, months, years, whatever. Gas gums up carburetors when it gets old. At that point, more than likely, you're going to be replacing the carburetor. So these are all things that could save you money over the life of the machine. or save from injury, or it's the operator's manual has more than just safety information is really the point I'm trying to make here. If you're more of a gearhead, it's even got a little section in here for you where they give you specs on the model, weight, engine displacement, bore and stroke information, compression ratio. Everything in here is just kind of neat. Then it gets to the end and warranty registration information, and that's it. Don't just throw this thing in the trash. You should read it because it's got good information, and it's probably answers a lot of the questions you have if your equipment does start having issues.